the basement.
Can we have like the THX sound?
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. This is our very first episode. I'm Jack.
And I'm Casey.
And this is the original podcast that talks about movies and video games, both new and old. We live in a world where there's too much to watch, play, and listen to. And we're here to tell you what's good, what's awful, and what's really not that bad. Today's topic, I think is a great introduction for the show, is Star Wars.
Yeah, Star Wars games and otherwise. I think both of us can consider ourselves somewhat of as much of an expert as you could possibly be at something like this.
I'll retract from that. Just because I know very little about the expanded universe.
Well, they're not canon no more. So.
Yeah, so sorry nerds that have memorized that stuff. Mara Jade is dead.
I wonder if that was just like Bob Iger at Disney was like, I hate all these goddamn nerds.
Well,
and I hate how they essentially Bible thump the expanded universe. So I'm gonna say fuck you. We're going to erase all that.
I think it has to do with the Star Trek thing, right? Like J.J. Abrams takes over Star Trek in 2009, rebrands it.
Mm-hmm.
I think Star Trek is something that has a great audience, but I think that the fear is that if you're a Star Trek fan, you have to really get into that. You have to have friends that like indoctrinate you into that. Like one doesn't just like there's a really tough place. Like where do you start with Star Trek? Like I'm not a Trekkie, but I think that's like a hard thing to do.
I think that was
and so
tough.
I think that's what they're doing with Star Wars.
Right. I mean, even now, it's tough to think if someone were to tell me to watch Star Trek, like what iteration of Star Trek would I watch at this point?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of bad Star Trek iterations from what I've been told.
The first one is my go-to, but
I mean, anything with Shatner and Nimoy obviously is going to be the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the original, the OG cast.
So, and here we are talking about Star Wars, and by that we mean talking about Star Trek. But yeah, so I think Star Wars is in a really weird place right now. I think that after the tragedy of the prequels, where really everyone who's involved with producing stuff for Star Wars is trying their hardest just not to do that. So I think when it comes to the movies, I don't care that it goes to, the original. I know that's like the big complaint right now is that, it's just the same carbon copy of A New Hope. It's like, well, A New Hope is a carbon copy of a bunch of other movies just mixed together. Like
even more so.
I mean, so
just the crawl itself is a carbon copy of
we know
Flash Gordon.
Yeah. So I think that how does that trickle into other media? I think that's an interesting thing to look at when we look at the games, because is there, look at like the Disney Infinity. There isn't really an actual released game for The Force Awakens.
No, and I think that movie games are a decaying breed. I mean, just straight to game adaptations of movies, I guess you'd say, that were really big. And
I'm trying to think of like what were the worst movie adaptation games that I ever played.
Avatar
for Xbox 360 was pretty bad. That was one that
pretty
I know.
Awful.
As a retro like collector, there's so many movie tie-in games in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Like every series has a movie tie-in, and it's awful. I mean, there are some good games. It depends on the company that gets the rights.
Right.
But the Angry Video Game Nerd has chronicled, LJN getting the rights to all these great franchises and then just taking a shit on them.
Right.
You play Terminator on NES and you want to blow your fucking brains out.
Well, it seemed for a while, a lot, I guess post 90s, as we got into the aughts, a lot of these movie games were just kind of thrown into the closet of handhelds and Nintendo, apparently, like, unfortunately.
So I guess the thing is, like, a lot of people are complaining about the new Battlefront.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've played through it. I've played enough of it to just understand how the rest of the game goes. And once you've played 2 matches of it, because there's pretty much only 2 maps, that's not right. I think there's about 4 or 5 maps, but you pretty much get the gist of the game. The problem I have with the new Battlefront is that while people seem to think that it really evokes the feel and look and sound of Star Wars, It doesn't to me.
It didn't seem to do that to me either. I've played it.
Yeah, I mean,
but
anyone can throw in the TIE fighter noise and the Imperial Walker like footsteps into a game and make it sound like Star Wars.
well,
But
I know in the DLC announcement, it's like Han and Luke are getting skin updates for,
yeah, they get their
the Hoth
Hoth
battle.
outfits.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's like, well, why wasn't that part of the release? Like,
exactly.
there's nothing more weird looking to a Star Wars fan than seeing Luke in his black Return of the Jedi outfit on Hoth. And that
Yeah.
really bugged me. And then also the fact that there are TIE fighters and X-Wings on Hoth when those weren't part of that. So like I guess that's like the big difference, right, between the original Battlefront that's great is it's not a perfect game. It's very broken in some like I haven't played it online because the servers have been shut down for about 8 years, I think. But
on PC you still could.
Oh really?
But, yeah,
that's cool.
I believe so.
And I'm willing to bet there's probably like some cool rogue users that are
yeah.
keeping their own
that seems like one of those
up.
games that would just maintain a fan base forever.
And what's great about it is there's so many little homages. There's like I know on Bespin you can get into the Cloud Car, and on the Dune Sea level and Tatooine you can get on the skiffs that Jabba's guards were on in Return of the Jedi. And so it's like these are things that are not great vehicles, and but they need to be there because this is Star Wars. Like there needs to be all of these set pieces. This is a franchise built off of all the set pieces, built off all the action figures. Right. And so you need all those things in there to make the game feel like Star Wars. And so when it's a balancing issue or it's we need to get this product out by holiday 2015, that bugs me. And I think it bugs a lot of other Star Wars fans. I think that's what really puts them off on that.
Well, I think that's also just an earmark of EA as a company in general. Like they've always been the kind of company to just push out games as quickly and as efficiently as possible. I mean, they look stunning. That's that can't be argued.
It's beautiful, yeah. No,
it looks beautiful, but you look at a game like Star Wars Battlefront, the original, and even Star Wars Battlefront 2, which I would argue is not a better game, but I just like the variety of the maps. And say what you want about the prequels, there were some pretty awesome maps in those games.
Yeah, no, the games are, I think, for a generation of people, the games are what saved that prequel trilogy.
I mean, essentially,
it really did.
Games that took place in the prequels are essentially the best Star Wars games. I mean, aside from anything that has expanded beyond that, like Knights of the Republic, but Clone Wars game, all the movie adaptation games that were on the GameCube and PS2.
Yeah, Jedi Power Battles was fun on PS1. Yeah. That was a good one. That was just like a 4-player beat 'em up, like, and you're all Jedi.
Yeah.
That was I saw some list that was like 30 best Star Wars games, and that was like on their worst list of Star Wars games.
Oh, really?
And I checked other lists because I was wondering if I was in the minority. It's much better than the Star Wars fighting game, which Mitch Hanks, if you're listening, I'm sorry I bought you that for your 12th birthday. I regret that decision. We played it once, and we played it actually 2 times because one of the characters is a Tusken Raider. And it's kind of funny thinking that like a Tusken Raider and Luke Skywalker are equals in a one-on-one fighting game when Luke Skywalker gets his lightsaber. But his name was Hor. His name was Hor. H-O-A-R.
H-O-A-R.
And whenever you picked him, the announcer in like this bland, like Ben Stein-like voice would just go, Hor. And Casey's laughing now. Imagine what this did to a birthday party of, sugar high 12-year-olds. Let's just say it was the best gift. I mean, it was a bad gift, but it was a great gift.
I just imagine like your mom giving you that gift, and she's like, "Oh, pop it in the GameCube. let's see what it's all about."
Now
choosing Hor versus
Hor. No, well, that was the thing. That was the biggest joke, is that we'd only have Hor fight Hor, and then it became Hor versus Hor. And then, of course, every character has their little, noises that, Luke will be like, the Force is with me. And then when Hor wins, he goes, yeah, so Hor will be back and in greater numbers. So, and that's what's funny about that, because there's that whole generation of fans, I think, because there is a disconnect with my parents and my uncles. They hate prequel trilogy so much more than I do. And I think it's because they didn't have those games, and also they weren't kids.
Yeah. A lot of I love the prequel trilogy for what it is, just because it's all we have at this point. And I mean, obviously, when I was younger and first saw them, I had rose-colored glasses on, and I just loved it. I mean, even Jar Jar when I was a kid, it was like, oh my god, that's amazing.
Any 8-year-old, especially
that's what that character was for. It was for the young generation. Which, I mean, George Lucas just didn't understand what people loved about his movies, and that's the worst part. It's not to say that those movies were inherently bad. It's that these movies were completely different than what it was established in the original trilogy.
Oh yeah. Well, it almost took a weird, like, expanded universe take on things, because we're engaging in politics. We're engaging in how this, because that's literally,
which had the potential to be amazing.
Yes, I
Politics
actually think
in Star Wars is incredibly interesting,
and that's why I want to talk about the new movie. What is it, Rebels? Rebel One,
Rogue One,
Rogue One. Yeah, okay. See, I go into these fresh. I'm gonna say Casey right now. He's the expert. He does the research on the new stuff. I don't really do this. I watch the movie. I like it. But I don't do all this build up to the movie.
Going fresh.
Exactly. I'm Frank Costanza.
That's fine.
But that's the thing, right? Like, it's something where George Lucas really, shit the bed.
Yeah.
With the whole politics of the Star Wars universe, and the expanded universe did such a good job building and basically saying, okay, George Lucas laid out this wonderful world that we don't really understand yet. And all these nerds just sat there and just started adding to it. And that's really cool. And I think that's like it's very impressive.
Right. Well, we were talking earlier is that one of the reasons that the original trilogy works so well is that it's just such a slow movie. Well, A New Hope in particular. And because we don't know a lot about what's happening, it's just it's very sedate in that way, where it's just like one scene, like scenes will last and just carry on. Like the scene where Luke's talking to Obi-Wan about his father lasts for about 7-8 minutes. Like, that's a long scene.
Yeah, they're just in. And I was saying there's really 3 scenes. Actually, I would say 4 scenes. There's 4 sets in that movie. There's Tatooine, there's the Falcon, there's inside the Death Star, and then there's Yavin.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And it worked.
And it works perfectly because we get these glimpses of that. And I'm wondering if we're going to see that in episode 8. Well, because episode 7, as much as I loved it, felt, it was J.J. Abramsy. It was fast. It was fun. It was an action movie. And action doesn't necessarily equate Star Wars. And I know that's weird and contradictory, but you want to find an in-between of, episode 3 and episode 1. You don't really want to have episode 1 where you're talking about tax treaties and, policies of the Federation.
And when you watch it back now, it's episode 1. The first 20 minutes of the movie before Jar Jar even shows up is actually really enjoyable. It is slow when they're talking in their semicircle about the Trade Federation and blockades and all that stuff. It's like, okay, this has the pacing of A New Hope in a way, but it's just so boring.
And they got because
George Lucas couldn't write dick about
really racist aliens
and really racist. Oh,
but don't worry, they get racist in episode 2 as well.
Oh, yeah,
they get like
and don't worry, every nationality gets hit.
Yeah, George Lucas is like the South Park of the galaxy far, far away.
Pretty much.
So I guess the thing is, when we're talking about games, and part of the show is really recommending games. So one thing I do is I'm more of a old school gamer. My collection is mostly Super Nintendo and Nintendo, GameCube, N64. And here are like just a couple great games that if you've never played, check them out. If you have your N64 up in your attic, or you have a friend who for some reason only has a GameCube still, try these games out. They're fun and they're worth your time. And they might make you think a little bit differently about the original trilogy because they help shape, my perspective of it.
Right. And let's be fair that the prequel trilogy did spawn a lot of great things. And without the prequel trilogy, we probably wouldn't have The Force Awakens, because there wouldn't have been this need to reboot the franchise.
If it wasn't that bad.
If the prequel trilogy didn't happen, George Lucas would still have Star Wars.
Yeah, he would never have sold them to those white slavers.
No, never.
So here are my prequel picks.
Okay.
Yeah, prequel pick number 1. Star Wars Pod Racer on N64, and I want to say it's on Dreamcast and PlayStation 1 as well.
I always wanted to believe that was like an N64 exclusive, but I doubt it was.
Yeah, no, I think it is also on Dreamcast. I don't know about the PS1, but because I don't really have a big collection of PS1 games. But amazing game, very fun. It takes one of the 2 scenes that's watchable in episode 1 and makes a whole game about it, and it's great. And pretty much every character that gets announced in that scene, you get to find out their background. They have like really good bios. You figure out who are like actually like good racers. We all think Sebulba's the best. Well, there's other racers in the game that are actually better than Sebulba, and it's very cool. And it's really fun, and it's dated. Yeah, I know, 1999.
And one of the greatest parts about that game was the Racer Select screen. It took place in a cantina.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know, it just had the aesthetic of that, and the way that it sounded was just so original trilogy, which is like
to touch back to the new Battlefront. Like you look at the menus and they're just so milquetoast. They're white and black, and they're just so not the old one. And they're just so boring. And when you look at what's going on in Pod Racer, it's creating that world again. It's trying to get you into that world. So that's my first pick. Second pick, the prequel picks, is Star Wars, the Clone Wars on GameCube. Just look, episode 2 is kind of like it's a cock tease for a lot of kids when they watch that movie, because the attack of the clones is the last 30 minutes, and that's it. We don't get to the really cool. We get to see a decent amount of the cool battle, but we don't get all of it.
And the rest is the rest is a schmaltzy soap opera between 2 terrible actors.
Yeah, no, it's kind of wonderful to see that. I mean, when I was 10, when did that come out? 2002. So yeah, when I was 10, I thought it was the best movie ever made, but I was disappointed because it just cuts off right there. Well, don't worry, people. It's on the GameCube. It's on PS2. It's on Xbox. The best thing about this game isn't the single player. The campaign is boring. It's fun, but it's boring. There's like no real plot points that you really need to,
it's like, they
watch
won the battle.
Yeah, the best mode is the academies. There's 2 academies. There's the Geonosis Academy, which you all run around with lightsabers, and it's a survival mode. This predates Horde mode and like Gears of War. So it's really cool that this is like one of the first sort of team survival games. And then the other academy is Thul Moon, which I don't know where Thul is, but the Thul Moon Academy is the coolest game ever. You pilot either a tank or an AT-XT, and you fight off wave after wave of Federation or CIS, I believe that's what they're called after the war begins. CIS ships and bad guys, and it's just a good game. And the fun thing is, it's really easy to pick up and play. It's not one of these games. It's dense. And that's what I like a lot about that generation, especially GameCube games, because you don't need to be a gamer. You don't need to know all these things. You can literally just have your friends over, have a couple beers, and say, "Hey, you remember this?" And pop that in when you're not playing Super Smash Brothers Melee. It's good break. Did I have a third pick? Shit. The DS one of episode 3 is pretty good. It's a beat 'em up, and you get to like power yourself up. It's kind of an interesting take on the whole thing, because you wouldn't think that would happen. That's the way they would do it, as a side-scrolling beat 'em up. But it works well, and it's really cool. Sadly, you can only play Obi-Wan and Anakin, which is annoying. But
I mean, the episode 3 adaptation for GameCube, Xbox, I believe it was on Xbox, PS2. That was a great game. What was great about that is that came out before episode 3 even came out, and it had all these cutscenes with actual movie footage.
So back in the day, kids, this is how this shit actually happened. That's how they sold these terrible games. Was they would bait you with, we got scenes from the actual movie.
Yeah, and
of course it came out like a week before the fucking movie did.
It did, and it ended the same way that episode 3 ended.
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
Which it's just fascinating to think that the Lucasfilm would allow all that footage to be released before the movie actually came out.
It was being streamed in wonderful 480i.
I mean, this is also the same studio that allowed the soundtrack for episode 1 with the track titled Qui-Gon's noble end to release before episode 1 dropped.
Come on, you knew he wasn't gonna last.
Yeah, but the one noteworthy game, one of two noteworthy Star Wars games I'd want to talk about was the first being, I mean, it's a pretty obvious one for a lot of people, but Knights of the Old Republic. Of course, I flub that as soon as I say it. But that game truly is remarkable for just how it really captured. To me, it captured what made Episode 4 so great because of just how everything was new. Like when it was the first game to really explore that world.
And that's one of the things that kind of surprised. I mean, I watched my older brother play this game. I actually have never beaten KOTOR. And let me tell you, people, don't judge me, because when you see somebody beat the game, it really takes a lot of the motivation to beat the game yourself.
Yeah, I mean,
it took the wind out of my sails, and I never beat it. But that's like one of the best things about this game is that it takes place so long ago.
Right. So everything is new.
It's a completely new universe, but it's also familiar.
It is familiar. I mean, sometimes I have a little bit. I mean, it came out in 2003, I believe. So, and for 2003, the voice acting is phenomenal. Granted, the Twi'leks and the Hutts and the Wookiees might have like maybe just 2 or 3 different sound bites they use for their paragraphs of dialogue, but I mean, it's still good. I mean, it works. But what's great about this game is that, I mean, it just kind of puts you in this world as an interloper. Like you don't start off like in Force Unleashed. It's just this powerful and almost like omnipotent being, like the Jedi usually are made out to be in these games. It's like you're just a guy or a girl. You're a smuggler. You're a scout, or you're I forget the third class, but it's arbitrary because by the time you end up getting to the Jedi Temple, pretty much every class that you chose doesn't really matter. Then all that matters is the Jedi or Sith classes. But yeah, no, the story was amazing. It's probably the only Star Wars game that has a notable story.
The Star Wars fighting game for PlayStation 1 has a pretty good one.
Oh yeah,
Hor lost his children.
Okay.
And he seeks revenge on the Jedi.
I mean, it's probably why Anakin wanted to kill them all.
No, that's exactly why.
Hor stole my mother.
Hor's children were killed by Anakin.
You know what's fucked up about that scene is that he goes back to Padme and he's like, the men, the women, and the children too. I killed them all. She's like, I love you.
Look, I'm not saying
but
Tusken...
kill a couple of younglings. Oh my God.
Well, that's the other thing. Tusken Raiders are humans. People don't realize that, but the same people are actually humans.
They're just misunderstood.
Yeah, and they
misunderstood mule
language.
Donkey people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not gonna go on and on about this game. Most people who have played video games and have have just know Star Wars obviously know about this game. The second one I'm not too familiar with. I understand that you start as a Sith and or a Jedi. I believe you start as a Sith and then you get flashed back and then you have the opportunity to kind of change where you want to go. So I think the first half hour of the game you are a very powerful Sith.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
So
you start off
and that you see like a vision of your future essentially, and then you kind of like use that.
So it's the Sith Lords.
It's use that as the catalyst to decide if that's what you really want to be. And then the sequel to that, which isn't, it's a sequel but not in the traditional sense, is the BioWare MMO, The Old Republic, which, to its credit, was actually a very fun leveling experience. It recreated what was great about the first 2 games, but even on a larger scale, because you were able to actually just traverse the entire galaxy. I mean, it was a MMO in the truest sense. Like, the world was expansive, the universe was expansive. Didn't really have too much of an end game, unfortunately. And then my problem with MMOs is that once I get to the level cap, it's just kind of like, it's over for me, because I just don't have the time to dedicate to optimizing my stats and shit like that. But
you can only really pick one of those games to play.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with MMOs too for me is that if I play anything else while I have an MMO that I'm currently playing, it's like I'm not giving that game enough to love. It's it's an obligation. It's a job essentially. And I played World of Warcraft for over 10 years, and I could say for those 10 years I did not play very much else, because that's just the way those games. I mean, they make you feel. They want you to keep playing. So, but and then the other notable Star Wars game that I played a shit ton of was Jedi Knight. Wait,
Jedi Knight 2.
Jedi Knight 2.
Jedi
Outcast. Yes, the very weird name, but that was on the. Well, you had mentioned that it possibly was an Xbox exclusive. No.
The second Jedi Academy, the third one, Jedi Knight. That one's just called Jedi Academy. That one is an Xbox exclusive.
Oh, it is
also on PC.
Okay.
Jedi Outcast is GameCube.
Right.
I think GameCube, PS2, Xbox might be GameCube, Xbox. Not sure. I had it for both GameCube and
that's
Xbox.
That's the thing. Thinking back on it now, I'm not sure what I played it on my Xbox or my GameCube. Either it must have been my GameCube, because I was able to have 4 controllers, unlike the and I don't think there was even 4-player co-op. I just remember having the ability. But yeah, that game was incredible, just because you start off as, you're not a Jedi, you're just a dude, and
Kyle Katarn.
Pretty much, yeah. You have like, essentially you're just like a smuggler, I guess you would call it, or just a miscreant of the galaxy. No,
it's fun.
I think
I mean, I never played Dark Forces, so for me, this was the first time that this was a first-person shooter in the Star Wars world. So that was like mind-blowing.
Yeah, it was a first-person shooter, like a somewhat high fidelity for the time. And then once you get the lightsaber, it's like game over, because that game just becomes the most fun experience ever with a lightsaber, and you could decapitate and amputate. It's like insane.
It's pretty hilarious.
It's like I couldn't even imagine a game being made by Disney at this point where they allowed decapitations. But the best part about that game was the multiplayer, because you could do split screen local co-op and just do lightsaber duels with your friends. It was incredible.
The best thing about that is that you can get people to play that wouldn't. So Casey said earlier that, Kyle Katarn, he's not really a Jedi in the beginning of the game, but he does get a lightsaber. It's kind of like a Finn situation.
Well, it's kind of like if you ever watched Rebels or read the comic book, but Kanan, he's like, essentially he was a Jedi that was out exploring the galaxy on a mission when Order 66 happened. And he never got to finish his training, so he basically just finished on his own. He's just like half-baked Jedi. And he doesn't adhere to any of the doctrine. This is how he is. He's just like a neutral person as far as his philosophies go.
Well, I was just gonna say you can play as like bounty hunters with lightsabers. I know Bosk is a character, the Trandoshan bounty hunter. I don't know if I know Boba Fett is one of them. I know you can play as Boba Fett. I don't know if IG-88 or any of the other cool bounty hunters that.
Maybe we should have done some research on this, but
I mean, it's so
the gist of the
pop it in, see the hidden characters. It's good time.
Yeah,
it's fun seeing a stormtrooper use a lightsaber.
Right. So, I mean, that's pretty much it for today. We don't want to keep you listening for too long. First episode.
We just want to kind of shoot out some games, just list off some things, some titles that you may not have heard of, or you may have heard sucked, and give them a second chance, especially the Star Wars DS game for Episode 3. It's a good one, and by that I mean you'll play it for 30 minutes and go, this is kind of like. But
and I'm somewhat biased to the Star Wars universe in general. It's unfortunately the way I was raised. I just love it so much.
Did you see that the only official Episode 7 game is the Zen Pinball table for Star Wars?
Infinity too, the Disney Infinity game.
I don't count that. That's like an add-on to it.
Well, I know, but
anything that isn't in the style, like a realistic sort of depiction of the movie, to me, that doesn't. To me, that's like saying Lego Star Wars is the official Star Wars game. It doesn't now. Lego Star Wars is fun. And those games are they're a great time. And I haven't played a Lego Star Wars game in years, but they're fun. The pinball one actually looked interesting to me. I guess I'm just because I'm getting older. Video pinball looks fun.
Pinball. I mean, pinball machines are still great, and it's still awesome that they continuously push those out when like a big release happens, and they're awesome still.
Yeah, no, they're definitely fun. And if you find a place that like an
I am
actual
terrible at them, but
that's what I like about video pinball. It's a lot easier. But yeah, no. So I think the question is like, well, what happens now? Like after Battlefront, after like these large super AAA releases with EA.
Yeah, I mean that's what scares me is that if EA is going to be at the helm of all these Star Wars games, I don't see a good one coming down the pike anytime soon. I mean, there's rumors that they might get that game 1313 back on track, which if you've ever heard of it, it's essentially just a game that takes place on the bottom level of Coruscant, like the planet surface. And it's just where the seedy underworld is, and it's like about bounty hunters and shit like that. Like that game. So
Oh,
apparently,
that's another prequel game you got to try out. Star Wars Bounty Hunter. I forgot about that.
Bounty Hunter. Yes.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. There was
totally forgot about that.
LucasArts was cool because they just churned out a bunch of really cool titles that just tried stuff, and you're not going to get that from EA. You're going to get a safe title.
You never
like
see a bounty. You never see a Boba Fett game now, but
you'll see him as DLC.
Well, you'll see him as the
$12.
third anthology film, probably, because that's actually true.
But yeah, I think it's one of those things where one of my favorite games last year was made by Ubisoft, and it was called Grow Home. If you have a PS4, get this game. It is so much fun. It's awesome. It's also on PC, so if you have Steam, get it there. So much fun. But the cool thing about it is it's Ubisoft. It's a huge fucking studio making like a very small indie niche kind of game. And LucasArts as a company was that. They basically made really cool, weird titles all the time.
That's they were just like experimental pet projects.
Mercenaries. Like those were just like kind of weird games. They're just like, all right, let's just see what we can do.
Yeah.
So if EA is listening, I know they're not. Well, actually, they probably are because they're
screening for anyone who's talking shit about them.
Yeah, they're one of those corporate entities that can afford to listen to this. So, listen to our advice and design some sort of like smaller projects that try just new things rather than hitting everybody ever that wants to play a Star Wars game.
Right, because unlike the movies, games will always have that niche demographic. I think that the movie, especially with this new movie that just came out, it's clear that Star Wars is no longer like a nerd thing. It's an everybody thing.
Yeah, I never felt like it ever was.
I mean, I feel like maybe
the prequels were more like that, but the original trilogy, I mean, everyone I work with mostly people that are about 15 to 20 years older than me, and they all talk about seeing the original ones. And that was just something everyone did. My dad would talk about that. Like he was the kid who never got to see Star Wars because his parents sucked. Nah, they're good. They're good people. Love you, Grandma. Thanks for listening. But it was just so funny because that was something everyone saw and saw it multiple times, and this one is one that people are doing. People are seeing it again and again. And everyone at my job has seen it. They would definitely not see Attack of the Clones.
Well, the issue with that, and we're running a little long on this, but there was nothing familiar about those prequels. When Force Awakens, when the marketing started to hit, it's like, holy crap, there's Han Solo, there's Millennium Falcon. These are what the people who, the marketing for the Phantom Menace, it's like, who the fuck is that toad looking guy?
Well,
who's that horny rhino guy?
There's a shadow behind this little boy. That looks like a character I knew.
Yeah. It's like, we didn't need a fucking trilogy about Darth Vader.
But he threw fat baby Greedo into it. So all is justified. So, yeah, so that kind of ends on a negative note for us, I think.
Well, what's great about Star Wars is that no matter how shitty it could be at times, when it's good, it's probably the best piece of like media that you could ever consume at its best.
Yes.
At its worst, it's a little embarrassing, but I still love it like it's my child.
It's the old adage about pizza. Even when it's bad, it's good.
Yeah.
So it's fun. But hopefully there's like a modding community or somebody that will just take these titles and have fun with them, and maybe take these older ones and continue to update and just mess around with. And if there's one thing that the Star Wars community will do, it's persevere, even if the games suck.
Yeah.
No, so don't worry about that.
For sure. So anyways, that's it for us today. We're going to throw this up on an RSS feed, iTunes, YouTube, all that kind of crap. just to see what people think, and whether or not we should keep giving a shit.
Yeah, let us know. And thanks for stopping by. And we'll see you guys next time.
Yep, see ya.
Contributors to this broadcast include Jack Wells and Casey Fitzgerald, with music by Dan Morell and artwork by Evan LaMedica. This entry has been mixed and edited by Casey Fitzgerald.